On a landmark visit to Tehran, Vladimir Putin speaks out against military force in the region and backs a peaceful Iranian nuclear program. But can Russia be a long-term ally of the Islamic Republic? This is Inside Story. Hello there, good to have your company. I'm David Foster. He's the first Russian leader to visit Iran since Joseph Stalin set foot there during World War II. On the agenda, a meeting of Caspian Sea states. But Vladimir Putin's used the occasion to support peaceful nuclear development by Iran and send a veiled warning to Washington that military action will not be tolerated. Hugo McPherson has more.
A Russian president on a rare visit to Tehran. This time for a summit of 5 Caspian Sea nations, each with a stake in the oil-rich waters. The result? A pact to respect each other's soil.
All
of the Caspian Sea countries asserted that their armed forces will never be used to attack or invade each other.
A sentiment backed by Mr. Putin, who said any use of military force in the region was unacceptable. While the Caspian states form the focus of the summit, Washington and its allies will be studying the relationship between Iran and Russia carefully. The pair might seem firm friends, but they are not easy bedfellows. Russia recently banned all organized religion. Iran, on the other hand, is an Islamic republic and still in the grip of powerful clerics. They vie as two of the world's most powerful energy suppliers, believed to have more than a third of the world's natural gas reserves between them. And Russia is a former superpower, hoping to keep a foothold in the Middle East. While Iran is keen to extend its own influence, played out largely through the region's Shia Muslims. Yet crucially, both seek to curb the impact of the United States. Iran wants Russia to use its vote in the UN Security Council to block the sanctions President Bush wants to impose on its nuclear program. It also wants Russia to complete its Bushehr nuclear reactor, a project Moscow seemed to be dragging its feet over. In Tehran, Mr. Putin appeared supportive.
Russia is the only nation which is helping in the development of Iran's peaceful nuclear program. The declaration we signed today is against the proliferation of nuclear weapons, but declares we all have the right to develop peaceful nuclear programs.
And the benefits for Russia? Iran is a useful ally in the Gulf, a part of the world with many friends of Washington's. There's been talk, too, of Moscow and Tehran forging a gas cartel, creating a powerful energy axis in the region. Whatever the agenda in Tehran this week, a suspicious West will want to know, will these two countries be meeting more often in the future?
Let's get the opinion of our guest on Inside Story from Moscow. Dmitry Babich, a political analyst and writer for Russia Profile magazine. In Tehran, we have Syed Mohammad Marandi, head of American Studies at the University of Tehran. And in Washington, D.C., Paul Saunders, the executive director of the Nixon Center. Let's start in Moscow, then move straight to Tehran. Dmitry Babich, first of all, what's in this for Moscow?
Well, I think it's a very important visit, but I wouldn't jump to conclusions now. Certainly, Iran is not Russia's ally, and Russia is not an ally of Iran. Of course, Russia supports peaceful development of Iranian nuclear program, but as you probably know, Russia dragged its feet on the atomic power station in Iran, in whose construction we are participating. And when Iran suggested a gas cartel about a year ago, it got basically a very cold response from Moscow. So I wouldn't jump to conclusions saying that Russia is an ally of Iran and that if Iran is in trouble, Russia is going to help it out.
So to use the old adage, if the going gets tough, Russia will get going and leave Iran on its own?
Well, certainly Russia is not interested in any military action taking place near its southern borders. And certainly, especially Russia is not interested in a US-led invasion of Iran. But Russia is going to resist this invasion by political means, in the same way Russia opposed the invasion of Iraq a few years ago. But I wouldn't say that Moscow gives Tehran any guarantees, like coming to its help if it's attacked or anything. That would be responsible on Moscow's part.
Okay, let's put that aside. Mohammad Marandi, listening to that from Tehran, the Iranian capital, is that of any comfort?
Well, I think what is important for Iran is for Russia to be a reliable partner. And the fact that the Russian president has said that the American behavior, over the past few months, he's been saying that the American behavior in the international arena has been inappropriate. The fact that the Russian president has said that there's no proof at all to show that Iran's nuclear program is anything but peaceful. Iran expects that the Russian president will continue to take this path and to be supportive of what it seems to be, what it sees to be the truth.
But the question is, can you trust Russia to stay with you as a friend?
Well, I think in today's world, where it is very unpopular to be an ally of the United States, and where Russia too itself needs Iran as a friend. After all, the Russians have lost a great deal of ground after the collapse of the Soviet Union. NATO has advanced westward towards the Russian western borders. In Central Asia, the Americans are trying to decrease Russian influence. So Russia does indeed need Iran, which is today the most powerful and important country in the Middle East and Northern Africa. And Iran, too, would like to see a very strong relationship with Russia. So I think at the moment, this is a good time for the two sides to understand that they have mutual needs and for them to be supportive of one another in order to keep the region stable.
Okay, it sounds a little fragile, but we can understand at the moment perhaps why it's a marriage of convenience. Let's put this point to Paul Saunders from the Nixon Center, listening in the American capital, Washington, D.C. Why do you think Russia has been so keen to help Tehran with its nuclear program?
Well, looking narrowly at the nuclear program, Russia certainly needs the revenue for its nuclear industry, the nuclear establishment from the former Soviet Union, and there's obviously much less a market for that today than there was in the past. I think there's a broader goal on the part of the Russian government really to try to develop actually a global nuclear industry, building nuclear plants not just in Iran but in a number of other places. And from that perspective, Iran, I think, is very important to Moscow to be able to demonstrate that it's something that they can do, that it's something that they can do independently of political pressure from the United States or elsewhere.
But let's, as you say, that's a narrow view of it, just talking about the nuclear program. Let's broaden it out a little bit, and I'll read to you what Putin said, President Putin said in March, having agreed some kind of defense deal with Iran. He said, Iran has a right to defend itself. Our regional and international well-being is largely interdependent. How do both Iran and Moscow view that?
Well, certainly they do have a number of common interests in the region, as others on the program have already mentioned. There's a very strong mutual interest in stability in the region. I think there's also a strong mutual interest in limiting the role that the United States has in the region. There are a number of other interests in developing trade. President Putin just said yesterday, or perhaps earlier today, I believe, that turnover between the two countries has now reached $2 billion. So there are a number of mutual interests. I think the big long-term question that others have hinted at is this, in essence, a pragmatic and short-lived partnership between two governments that have perhaps some common interests, but not a lot of real strategic interests in common, or is it something else?
Okay, let's go to Moscow. Dmitry Babich, and this is something else I've got in front of me here. Russia is concerned about its energy supply, and particularly worried about a US plan to build an underwater pipeline under the Caspian Sea, linking on one side Turkmenistan, the other side Azerbaijan. It wants Iran's help to protect its wealth, really, doesn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say so, because basically Iran and Russia could be competitors. They could be competing states, because both Russia and Iran could be transit countries for Caspian oil reserves. Basically, from a technical, from an economic point of view, the pipelines going through Russia or through Iran are much more economically viable than the pipelines going under the Caspian Sea from Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan, or the pipelines going via Azerbaijan and Georgia to Turkey. So the only reason why the United States doesn't want Russia and Iran to be transit countries for Caspian oil is political. So in that sense, Russia finds itself in the same boat with Iran, but basically, if the game is fair, Russia and Iran could be competitors.
International politics is never fair, Dmitry Babic. Let's talk to Syed Mohammed Marandi once more in Tehran. Is there a view, well, there is an international view that perhaps Iran wants this deal with Russia, particularly to do with the Caspian Sea, because it sees it would get a greater share of the economic wealth from there, the gas reserves, the oil?
Yes, it is very important. After all, oil and natural gas are two of the most important things right now that help the global economy move forward. And Iran, as well as Russia, both have enormous amounts of both. So I think that while the previous guest is correct in saying that in some issues, obviously, any two countries could be rivals, but the reality is that they both have large interests that are similar, and they are both they have highly developed oil and gas industries. So both sides would want the Caspian Sea issue to be resolved so that they could work together and enrich themselves and their countries in the region through their natural gas and oil reserves.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for now. We're going to take a short break right now on Inside Story, and when we return, we'll be asking what could make Russia change its positions towards Iran. Could it cave into US pressures? What might those pressures be? Do stay with us if you can.